Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Good day from the beautiful city of Abuja. It is my pleasure to warmly welcome you to this week's edition of Money Radio. And I say this week's edition, I'm talking about energy-focused edition of Money Radio. The topic we are discussing is next promise of increased power supply by July 1, 2022. How feasible? In the studio with me to discuss the topic is our in-house analyst, Mr. Anthony Uko. Mr. You're welcome again.
Thank you.
And I'm your host, Case Hammer. You know, the topic is, I don't know if I will say an ironic one or a paradoxical one, but somehow it sounds strange in the ears of a number of persons I have spoken to or who have aired their views on radio this morning about next promise of increased power supply. You know, since the beginning of this year, the national grid has collapsed something in the neighborhood of 5
Yes,
times.
the fifth one was just a few days ago.
Yes. And this fifth collapse was, I don't know how true it is. Some people say it dropped to as low as either 900 megawatts or 9 megawatts. I don't know how true it is. But if it is 9 megawatts, then that means I am not on NEPA or on the national grid. There's some other place that have been getting power supply because I did not experience that kind of shortage. However,
we've been saying that maybe you're not
yes,
on Nigeria's national grid.
Exactly.
And this just goes to prove it.
Yeah, this
if
goes
you
to prove.
still had power supply.
Yes, there has been no day I have not had power supply. So where I live, where we enjoy that kind of power supply, is going to remain secret because we don't want people coming into our area to enjoy such power supply. Albeit, listen, how low did the national grid collapse to? Was it 900 or 9 megawatts? Besides
It
that,
collapsed to almost zero. So if the 9 megawatts
Sounds-
yes. Because if you see that graph, it actually fell to zero. Apparently, it touched zero
I think
and
just
then
went to 9.
just started coming up. And you know that this collapse is not something that collapses and stays there
Yeah.
permanently or stays there for a very considerable time.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm of the belief that it may have happened and you didn't take note of it because it was very swift. It will happen. Power supply in that your area will go off, but maybe in the next 10 minutes or thereabout, it will come up because it is one of the priority areas, I dare say. You're just next to Aso Rock, and those areas don't.
We don't want people coming to live in that
even
area.
even if people know the area, the cost of those it's not for the everyday Nigerian.
Because let me warn you, I'm not rich in that class.
So I'm just so even if people know about that, it's not the area that it's for an all-comers affair. So
Okay.
people wouldn't they wouldn't hurry. But that is the privilege you're having, being at the back of the powers that be.
I know I'm not at the back of the powers that be.
So
Be that as it may,
yes.
now there has been so much. I wouldn't say many because it's beginning to sound uncountable. So I'll say so much promises.
Yes.
And these promises are yielding virtually nothing. You know, when this government, I won't go to the issue of government for now, but Nigerians have been having this one promise after the other, that the power supply or power distribution would increase.
Yes.
It seems not to be happening. In fact, it is not happening. To add salt to injury, we are having perennial system collapse.
collapse.
And for the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission to come up to say by July 1, we will have uh, increased
Improve.
powers, improved
Yes.
power supply. Uh, there are some things I will discuss later on, which I won't mention about. What is informing that optimism?
Yeah. Um, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission held a briefing with the power players, operators within the sector, the Nigerian electricity supply industry.
Yeah.
And then they are set to sign an agreement that will mandate them to put no less than 5,000 megawatts on the grid at all costs, all the time. And this agreement is to be signed between the generation companies who must ensure that they generate power, and then the transmission company of Nigeria, who sits in the middle to ensure that what the gencos generate gets to the
Discos.
discos, and the discos are able, and then the discos now have the responsibility of distributing.
So
So
sorry, one
okay.
second. Hitherto, or before now,
Mm.
what has been the lacuna? Because from what you're saying, there has been some kind of lacuna or some kind of disconnect between
Yes.
the tripod.
Yeah.
Yes. So what is that disconnect that
Well,
is going to be fixed now?
that is exactly why I'm asking, how feasible is that?
Okay.
Because being the power regulator and being in charge of this tripod of operators
Yes.
that make up the sector, we would have thought, the generality of Nigerians would have thought that NERC would have had a handle on these issues that will ensure that the three major players in that sector work seamlessly.
Yes.
So NEC now coming up to say that, okay, they're just a contract is going to be signed, and that this contract, it said this contract is part of the reforms that have been going on within the power sector to ensure that more power is put on the grid and Nigerians end up having more supply of this very, very important utility. It's what begin with beggars questioning,
Yeah.
that are they just signing this now? And if it is just putting pen to paper,
Why has it not been
what
done
has
all
it
this
not
while?
been done before now, and what is the assurance that now that this is being done, that power supply will get improved and Nigerians can have more of it?
It all sounds funny, really. Some of these things, in my opinion, should be kept secret because by revealing them now or by making this pronouncement, it's like you're insulting the sensibilities of Nigerians. You know, before, and I always point at this time when it was sometime around 2013, 2014, when a former minister of power was in power, the minister, Professor Bath Naji. That time, there was no, in fact, the power sector was still government owned,
Yeah.
wholly government owned, and we enjoyed power nationwide. And later on, I've said it on this show. Later on, I was privileged to ask a former chairman of the National Electricity
Yeah.
Regulatory Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission (NERC), who said, and he illustrated this way: it's just like having food brought to you or brought food delivered at your door for you to consume. but you are incapacitated for some reason and you can't get to your door. The person who delivers the food to your door says, "See your food here, I've brought it." And then you say, "Come in and deliver the food to me on this table because I don't have the capacity to get to the door. I am incapacitated." You said, "No, I can't come in there." And you, the receiver of the food, or the supposed to be the person who is supposed to receive the food, is not receiving it because you are incapacitated. So the food remains there, and you are not benefiting from the food. So it's just wasted. The food may get bad, and then it gets wasted. That's the illustration he gave. He said, "These are the things. The transmission company delivers this electricity to the distribution companies, but for some infrastructure reasons, some infrastructure deficit, the distribution companies cannot come and collect power. And power is not something that is stored on shelves. You can store it. Once it is there, it's there. If you don't use it, it's gone.
It's gone.
So that's the illustration he gave. That means these are some of the things that the new arrangement between the GenCos, the transmission company, and the DISCOs was supposed to solve.
So
That NERC chairman told me these are the things that the former power minister, Baf Naji, put in place for which we had power that much. Sadly, the man was forced to resign. And that's one of the resignations actually that has pained me in this country because that man was performing. We were receiving electricity. At the time, I decided to sell my generator because there was no need for it. Yes. So those are some of the things these people should have solved, at least some of the problems they should have solved. These issues should have been resolved. But to be on this issue in 2022, about 8 years, 8 to 9 years after them, is actually baffling. It is baffling. And that's why I mentioned earlier that talking about this issue right now is like insulting the sensibilities of Nigerians because these are not the kind of things we should be talking about at this moment. This bodes hardship for Nigerians. There's a report in the news today that says a liter of diesel may soon begin to sell for 1,500 naira. 1,500 naira. Most of our industries are powered by diesel generators. If diesel is going to sell for 1,500 naira, the cost of production is going to go so high. That's going to have implication on the final consumption, which has serious implication on inflation. If Nigerians should begin to pay more at this time for goods and services because of the cost of diesel or because of the lack of electricity, you can bet that is a stepping stone for social unrest, which we don't want in this country. All of these things should be averted.
And the predictions are so
gloomy. They're so gloomy.
They are so gloomy. Look at inflation. The prognosis is that by
today is 17.
Yeah, it's at 17, and IMF has said predicted 22.
Okay, when I look at the Americans, I look at the Americans and the Brits and some Western countries that are beginning to. So this, if you listen to foreign news and you see how the Americans, you see how the Brits are angry with their government because of the 9% increase in inflation. You begin to look at them and say, these people don't know anything.
They don't know. They don't even know what we're going through.
What we are going through. We are talking about inflation rate of 17%, and this is something we have gotten used to.
And that's the overall.
That's the overall.
Not
but
the food inflation
is far higher than that. So when we talk about these kind of things, people begin. In fact, it makes me laugh at them. It makes me laugh at them that I'm talking about the Americans. I'm talking about the Brits. I'm talking about other European countries, France, and all of. that are talking. We are talking about single-digit inflation, and they
Inflation.
are you people. Oh, it's too difficult. Look, let's take a short break because some of these things, if you're not careful, they give you high blood pressure. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss more on the way forward, if there is any way forward on this issue. Stay tuned.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back, viewers. You're still on to Money Radio, and this is the energy focus segment of the program. Still in the studio with me is Mr. Anthony Uko, and I'm your host, Case Hammond. And we're talking about NERC's promise, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is promising that by July 1, we'll begin to have improved power supply. And we're asking, how feasible is that? Yes, how feasible? Just before we went on the break, we were talking about the prognosis that between now and, sorry, very soon, we are going to have diesel sold at the rate of 1,500 naira per liter. And this is something that bodes so much economic hardship on Nigerians because much of what, look, it has been estimated that Nigerians right now produce up to 70,000 megawatts of electricity. As of the moment, you can see 68,000 is actually being produced by individuals and companies. Last year, around this time, or say 14 months ago, the price of diesel, which Nigerian manufacturers depend on almost solely, was going for 200 and something, 240 naira. Today is about 800 naira, and we are talking about 1,500 in the near future. We're talking about just about a month from now, according to prognosis. If that happens, the cost of production will be so high. So this electricity that NERC is promising, at least, should be able to assuage the pains of Nigerians, the cost of production of Nigerians, and then by extension, the pains of Nigerians. Because if that doesn't happen, the cost of living is going to be so high, and it may spark social unrest, which none of us pray for. Because right now, there is problem everywhere. There is problem everywhere, and even out there, I'm talking about if you want to run to other countries, even if it's in the West, they are having their problems there. So this place needs to be habitable. Let's make sure it's habitable. But some of making this place habitable for now partly depends on power production. Yes, we want to make sure that we have enough power so that all of this, the cost of living is getting too high.
Anyway, back to next promise.
Yes.
One thing that I that stood out from the briefing yesterday was the fact that there are going to be consequences.
Okay.
In fact, that is actually, though the consequences were not revealed, but the NEC chairman Mr. Sanusi Garba actually made it known that there would be consequence for the generation companies not keeping to their side of the contract by generating up to 5,000 megawatts starting from July 1st.
Okay.
And then the transmission companies would also, there would be consequences on them if they're not able to wheel all of this out to the distribution companies, who in turn would also be called to answer to the commission if they are not able to distribute all of what is willed to them. So I don't know what the sanctions or the consequences are going to be like, but the idea that there are sanctions, there are consequences, they would be called to answer for what they've signed. It's actually something, though not, we wouldn't say very comforting, but it's a race somehow.
You know what?
Something
Some of these
Nigerians can
threats,
grasp at.
some of these threats, I look at them as just political. You know why? They don't have teeth. Some of these threats don't have teeth because there are fundamental issues that are not addressed by these regulators.
Yes.
And they want to impose, I don't know if it's because of power, but they want to impose some kind of sanction or we could say their authority just by opening or by making press statements, which don't. Let me learn a point here. Some of the issues that are bedeviling the power sector. You know, about 80% of Nigeria's power generation comes from the gas turbines.
Yes.
The gas turbines are run by gas. That's the fuel to run the gas turbines.
And they have to be bought and paid
They
for.
have to be bought and paid for. The fuel is not all available. Nigeria does, of course. Nigeria is endowed with gas reserves. But also there isn't enough infrastructure to turn what is under the ground there into real gas. As a result of that, the generating companies actually import some of their gas requirements or supplies from Europe. Gas is a problem in Europe because of this Russia-Ukraine war. So getting the gas from Europe, number one, is more expensive. Number two, getting it is still a problem because there's not much available out there. So the fact that we are not producing enough gas in Nigeria and we have to get it from abroad at a costlier rate now makes it difficult for the Gencos. That's number one. Number two, the transmission company, which is owned by government, is owing the Gencos so much because they're not getting much from the distribution companies. The distribution companies in turn are saying, look, we don't generate enough money from our customers, and so less is being transferred to the generating companies. The generating companies need money to buy the fuel that runs the gas turbines. So how can you, if you have not put those things in place, begin to blame the generating companies for not producing enough electricity?
Besides the issue of the system not paying for what is produced,
yes,
there's also the infrastructure deficit that prevents the transmission company from being able to wheel everything that is produced all the time. So sometimes, because even before now, I don't know who has been not telling the whole story. The generation company says they are able to generate even much more than 5,000.
Yes.
But the transmission company would say, oh, their infrastructure does not allow them to bill as much as that all the time.
And who
So
owns the transmission
and
company?
the transmission company is owned by the federal government. So are those issues, have they been resolved? If it's concerning the issue of financial liquidity, the shortfall, the central bank has been coming in
Yes, from time to time.
from time to time. And since this agreement, this contract also encompasses the Central Bank of Nigeria, we can say that the issue of liquidity may be handled at that end.
Yes.
But what happens to the issue of infrastructure deficit that has been a problem all this while?
And the main infrastructure deficit is government-owned transmission company of Nigeria.
So I think for me, I would say it's rather Nigerians don't want to hear all this talk. Nigeria is tired of talk.
These things actually insult the sensibilities of
Nigeria is
Nigerians.
actually tired of talk. If diesel was okay, when the price of diesel was manageable and they were able to get diesel and generate independently. In fact, they were not even looking at
of course,
NEPA.
NEPA was actually standby.
Yes, it was a standby. So, but now things are the situation is really critical.
It's critical.
It's critical. And for Nigeria to continue this power conundrum, there has to be a lasting solution which goes beyond talking.
You know, I don't know. I don't want to go into politics, but just one of the political aspirants went to Egypt a few days ago
to understudy the system. And another aspirant has also alluded to the continued challenges in the power sector and said that not being able to solve that alone, it's an indictment.
Which should stop insulting people.
He himself shares because he was also in government at a point.
Look, these people. Some of these things, you know, when we begin to talk about it, you increase the blood pressure. The blood pressure actually goes high. But we are in a dire situation.
Yes.
And something needs to be done. Something needs
to give before everything comes tumbling down.
Exactly. And it only behooves the federal government to make sure that what needs to be done is done. Otherwise, things are not going to get easy.
Yeah, well, with this promise, let's just keep our fingers crossed and see how it unfolds. But I do hope that somehow it unfolds favorably for Nigerians.
And when we talk about Nigerians in this case, having power shortage, you can consider me a European.
Yes, you're not part of us when it comes to the issue of power. So just go to your cocoon and enjoy the power. Someone like me now, I'm just hoping, let this one work out. So that
I won't tell anybody where I live because we don't want people moving into that area. So that's how it has been. So thank you very much. We want to draw the curtain on today's program. Thanks for coming again to be a part of Money Radio, the energy focus. So it's actually our energy aficionado. And it's always nice having you. We want to say thanks to those of you who have been following us loyally on this program. It's always a pleasure having you. Our biggest thanks go to you because it's because of you we are here. We also say thanks to our producers. Until tomorrow, we'll come up with another edition of Money Radio, which shall be transportation focus of the program. From here, Leadership Last Word Studio, we are only saying have a great day. God bless you.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.